Hi everyone, this is the second to last video in this series about chords on the KO2. In this video we're going to cover as much of Blinding Lights by The Weeknd as we can in order to tie together everything that we've learned so far. Personally, I've learned a lot about music by just listening closely to songs that I like or know well, and then trying to recreate them, so I hope this really helps you too. My main goal here is to just have fun making a kind of weird cover of a song and then to talk about what I've taught so far in context. I'm also hoping to learn a little bit more about how to use scenes in order to make a full song myself. So, in other words, I'm way more focused on explaining concepts than I am on perfectly recreating this song. This means that I'm ignoring some really important parts of this song that make it so good. Namely, I'm not really going to bother with the automation, even though you definitely could do that on your KO2. I'm not going to bother with a lot of the kind of effects and ear candy because we only have one effect bus here. And then finally, I'm also not going to add in like those transitional risers, and those make a huge difference in this song. So it might sound a bit sparse, and that is just because I'm going with what I can make on the KO2. Here is a preview of just like a little bit of the song and what it'll sound like at the end of the video. Before we get started, I want to share some of the work that I did before I started recording this video, and some of it I started before I even began outlining it. So I looked up the tempo. I literally just searched Blinding Lights by The Weeknd in DuckDuckGo, and then I found one that seemed about right, and it does seem to match the song. I looked up the chords and the lead melody on Ultimate Guitar, and I read some opinions about which key the song is in. Then I spent probably like a good 30 minutes, maybe even an hour, mapping out the song and making notes about like what voices are doing what in which parts, you know, which instruments are present when. And then I've done some practice runs and bad takes of this. I'm emphasizing this because I want to say, please don't get frustrated if you find this hard to follow, because it's not even close to my first time doing this, plus I already did a cover of this on the OPZ. First, let's load our sounds, and these are all factory sounds. The way that I like to set up my KO2 is I like to put the drums at the bottom, followed by the bass, followed by like whatever pads, maybe leads or samples, and then finally like leads and arpeggios and stuff on A. So let's go ahead and add our drums to D. Personally, I like putting kick, snare, hi-hat, and that's most of what the song has, but it does have two other types of drums. So let's load the sounds that I will use. So I'm going to go here. This is going to be my kick. And I'm just going to load sound 1, and that is NT kick. Or sorry, micro kick. For this second slot, I'm going to put snare, 118, which is snare punch. I'm not psychic, I just have my notes. I'm just not looking at them all the time. And then here I'm going to add 200 for my hi-hat, which is the NT HH closed. Up here, I'm going to add a clap, because there's a clap at the end of almost every 4 bars. So let's go ahead and make this sound 316, which is Detroit clap 2. So that is our drum group. I may, as we go through, adjust some of the levels on this and maybe even the pitch of some of these, but this is more or less what we'll be sticking with. Group C is where I'm going to put my bass sounds, and I'm only going to use one. Weirdly enough, even though I like putting my drums at the bottom, I like putting melodic and bass samples and stuff at the starting from this pad 7. So that's just my preference. You really don't have to follow that at all. So I'm going to go to sound here, and I'm going to make this the OB sub, which is 420. What do you know? I'm already going to edit this because I'll bet if you don't have great speakers or headphones, you can't even hear that. So I'm going to increase the amplitude to try to overdrive it a bit. And then I'm going to change the sound style instead of legato. So I hit Shift and Sound to go to sound edit mode, and then all the way over here is the sound mode. And instead of having it be legato, I want it to change to one shot. And even then, it's not going to be quite long enough, but that's okay. And we're going to play with the time fader and some of these patterns as well. Next, let's add our pads in. So pads are going to go in group B. And there are going to be, I think, just 2 pads. There's a lot more. It sounds like it's very, very layered in the song, but we're going to make kind of a sparse version because, again, I'm just focusing on like the theory side of things here and the chords. So I'm going to make this one my atmospheric pad, I'll call it, which is just going to be, it's really just in the intro, and I'm not actually sure if I'm going to share that, or if I'm going to cover that, but here it is, 530. And the reason why I think that this works well is that if I go down an octave, it's going to sound a lot like the intro. And I don't know if I'll do the intro, but at least you'll have this sound set up. So that's the cello 360 sound, and it's sample 530. So I'm going to go out of keys mode, go to this sample slot. And here, I'm going to put in my vocal pad. So I think in the actual song, there's like a lot of layered reverb and stuff in the chorus, but I'm just going to be using the sound 509, which is BG vocals. Lastly, let's go ahead and go up to our lead pads. So I'm going to only put 3 here. So I'm going to put... in this slot, I'm going to put pad 515, or sound 515, which is E-piano 360. In this slot, I'm going to put like the arpeggio that happens in the verses and kind of as a transition, even though I won't be programming in the transitions. So I'm going to do 523, which is cello pluck 2. And then in this slot, I'm going to put 415, which is the Prodigy sub. And you might not be able to hear that unless I overdrive it a bunch, and that's okay. Finally, let's put our FX to being reverb, and we'll just add this as we go along. So let's get our track actually set up. So like I said, I looked up the tempo, and it is 171. I also looked up the key it's in. So it actually took me a bit, because the chords are F minor, C minor, E flat, and B flat. And so it can be tricky to figure out what key a song is in because it's kind of like what feels like home and what you're going to call 1 in relation to everything else. With this set of chords, we could be in probably a couple different scales if we changed around what we view as our 1. So I actually wasn't sure what was the right answer here, and I looked to some like message boards and Reddit threads and things like that, and I saw people saying this is an F Dorian, and that seems right to me because all these chords are in F Dorian, and it's really convenient if we make our first chord the 1 chord. That's not always the case, but if it's ambiguous, it's kind of nice to set it up this way. So Dorian is the minor scale, but with a raised 6th. And so our chords in Dorian are going to be minor 1, minor 2, major 3, major 4, minor 5, diminished 6th, and then a major 7th. And so in F Dorian, that'll be F minor, G minor, A flat major, B flat major, C minor, D diminished, and then finally E flat major. So let's go ahead and set our scale to match the key of F and the scale of Dorian. So I'm going to go to System, and I'm going to enter in 313, which is going to bring me to Dorian. And like I said, I have these in my notes. I don't fully have them memorized yet. Then I'm going to go back to System, and I'm going to enter in code 325, which is going to bring us to the key of F. So the last thing I did is I looked up the tab for the lead, which looks like this, and I tried to explain it simply. Maybe that should be its own video, but basically I counted up and figured out which notes were where, and then I just wrote those down and got used to kind of the melody. All right, now that we have our sounds loaded and we have our scale set up and stuff, let's actually start with our cover. So there's a whole like 12-bar intro that I'm actually going to skip because when I was trying to recreate this, it just sounded so far off. It required so much imagination because it's just really like a big old swell of a lot of different pads with a lot of reverb, and they are playing certain notes. But then when the drums come in and cut through that, things get really organized starting on bar 13. So that's just where I'm going to start for the sake of simplicity and for the sake of tying this into chords a little bit easier. In other words, we're basically starting with kind of the chorus in a way, because that's what this part of the intro is. And this is only going to last 8 bars. So let's start with our drums. So I'm going to go down here, and I'm just basically going to be doing a very simple pattern, and I will play it instead of sequencing it in, just because the the whole point of this is to learn how to play this thing. So I will start off by adding in my kick and my snare, and then I will just add in the hi-hat using timing, and we'll see if I need timing correct or whatever. So this basically is just kick, snare, kick, snare, kick, snare, kick, kick, snare. And the second time it goes kick, snare, kick, snare, kick, snare, kick, and then I think it goes clap, snare, clap. But you can obviously figure out what notes you think could go there in particular. Okay, so I'm ready to record that, and I'm going to hit record, and here we go. Oh boy, that was much faster than I remembered it being. So let me actually take a second. Okay, so I'm going to do the count in, and then we will get started here. Okay, and so actually I didn't record all 8 bars. I only recorded those first 4. And I can double that with the most recent firmware update by holding record, hitting shift, and then plus. So now that is doubled for the whole 8-bar measure. Here, if I start from 5, it's the same pattern. Okay, so let's move on to our bass sound, which is in group C, and I have it on pad 7 in keys mode. This is that OB sub sound. I have the amplitude up quite a bit. And I have it in one-shot mode, and I can't remember if that is what it originally is in or not. So I hit Shift and Edit, went to Sound, and made sure it was in one-shot mode. I would adjust that using the X knob if it weren't. The bass line, like I've discussed, is basically going to outline our chords. So our chords here are, F minor, C minor, E flat major, and then B flat major. So you could think of this as being 1, 5, 7, 4. And I'm mostly going to be just outlining those root notes on the bass. There's some notes in between that I'll discuss, but I'm mostly going to be playing that F, or that 1 chord. Then I'm going to go down to this 5 here, move over 2 to go to 7, and then I'll play 4 here. But like I said, there's some notes in between. Right now, I'm just going to record it, and I'll adjust the timing later, but I want to tell you what those notes in between are first. So I'm going to play 1, and then I'm going to have to briefly go up to 2 and then down to this dot. So here. So that's what it'll sound like, and that's 8 bars. So I'm just going to go ahead and do a count in, and then I'm going to record this over those 8 bars and adjust the timing after. So if you're listening closely, well, or if you're just not just listening in general, you might notice that this is now drowning out the drums. So I'm going to go ahead and change the fader level. And what I might do is go over here and adjust the amplitude of some of these just to make them a bit louder. And maybe I'll adjust the pitch, make it a little quieter or a little lower. Now I've got the bass recorded, but I forgot to add in the hi-hat to the drum, so I'll do that now. To add the hi-hats, I'm going to go ahead and select this, and you don't really have to do that, it's just habit. I'm going to hit record to arm the recording, then I'm going to hold timing down and play this one. First, let me check what I want 8th notes, so I hit timing, and it says 8. If it said 16, I would adjust this X knob until it said 8. So let's go ahead and add in a basic hi-hat here. Okay, after that little distraction, let's go ahead and adjust the timing of our bass note. So what I'm going to do here is I am going to adjust the time fader until it sounds about right. So after a bunch of back and forth, what I ended up doing is the timing mode is not changed in the sound edit settings, but I have the time fader at 0.55, which sounds pretty good. So that's close enough for my purposes. So I'm ready to move on to the pads, which I'm going to go to group B for that. And let's go ahead and open up, let's see, sound 509. And so I'm just going to, so I'm actually going to go ahead and just play the root notes. And then I'm going to add an octave, like record an octave over that. And then I'll timing correct to make sure that they're actually playing the chords, you know? So let's go ahead and, again, our root notes are going to be 1, then this 5, which is on the decimal pad, this 7, which is on the enter pad, and then this 4. So let's go ahead and get started. I did the walk down that the bass does. I don't actually know if the lead really does that. But let's go ahead now and gonna go out of keys mode, go to sound, hit correct. Was it already correct? There's no way that was already. Oh, you know what the thing is? I just realized on timing I have quantization on. That's why it sounds so much better than it usually would. So I'm now 1 octave above, and I'm gonna record that same melody here. Now let's add our melody. So the melody is going to be the following pattern. And again, I just looked this up from a tab. So I wish I could say that I knew more about it or I just figured it out by ear, but I didn't. So we are going to go hit that 1 twice, and we're going to go down and then back up. So from here, we're going to hit that 5 very briefly before we go to our 7. Then we'll repeat that same melody. Then we're going to do kind of 2 descending sort of runs starting from this B flat or this 4 chord. So 4, 2, 1, enter, 4, 2, 1, enter, 1. So let me just go ahead and record that in. That's a bit quiet for me, so I'm actually going to go to the sound and I will increase the amplitude there. Too loud now. And I acknowledge that this sounds like a really wonky lo-fi version, but again, just using factory sounds and trying to just talk about chords. So that was obviously a lot for just kind of the very first part, but thankfully the rest of the song I'm going to make mostly by committing and then very slightly altering the different parts of it. So the first thing I'll do is I'm going to commit this to scene 2. And because in the verse we don't have that lead, I'm going to go ahead and erase this pattern. The bass we still have, but it is lower than it was before. It's an octave lower. There's probably an easier way to do this, but I'm just going to go ahead and be lazy. And on this pattern, I'm going to set the, I'm going to tune it to an octave low. That is the wrong spot, isn't it? I am on pad B. I meant to go to group B. I meant to go to group C. Now I'll go ahead and tune it an octave low. I'm also going to erase the pad. And up here, I'm going to now open up one of my sounds for that arp. So in this case, I'm just going to be playing the, which sound was that again? 523, or cello pluck 2. So the arp here, it took me, well, I actually just had to look it up online because I could not figure it out on my own. But the way that does sound like it matches it is dot, enter, 1, 2, dot, enter. So really quick, it would be. And I'm just going to go ahead and play that for now, and I'll play with the sound afterward. So let's go ahead and just do that same pattern. Here we go. Let's just make that 4 because it's the same thing. And I'm not adding the automation. If you are adding the automation, you're going to want to make it the full 16 bars. So that way you can really, have those filters change throughout it as it does in the actual song. So let's actually mess with our sound now and go ahead and we'll see. So I wonder if I should actually make that an octave higher instead. So let's try to tune it that way. Yeah, that's fine. I'll go to sound edit mode now by hitting shift and sound, and let's go over to the envelope, and I will soften that attack. And now it sounds a bit quiet to me, so I can increase the amplitude a bit. And this seems like a good time now. I may actually need to go back to that first scene. Let's start adding in the reverb effects. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the effects send fader, and maybe I won't have the bass go there, but maybe I will have the pads. Okay, that's close enough. So I will go ahead then and move back to scene 2, and I'll try to roughly estimate where the effects faders were for those. Oh, and I just realized that the bass here is actually, what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and record a change at the beginning to set it to 0. And then at the beginning of this scene, I'm going to record a change at the very beginning that's going to take it down an octave. So that way we get that contrast. Okay, here we are. So that's, that actually sounds a little bit like too soft of an attack there on that arp. So I'm going to, I'm going to go ahead and edit the sound, and let's decrease the attack. Maybe it's because it's, let's see. Let's go to the sound. Let's change it to 1 shot. No, key is fine. Okay, so that's probably as good as we can get for right now. And so what I'll do is I'm going to duplicate this, and I'm going to use this basically as our pre-chorus, but I'm going to make it like half the duration. And just to emphasize how long this section is, let's make the drums 16, just that way we know that this is a 16-bar pattern. I actually find that really helpful to just remember to have like one group be the one that I go to check where I'm at in a given song or a given pattern. So let's commit, and we're going to go ahead and use this as our pre-chorus. So I just changed the drums to being only 8 bars, so I remember that the pre-chorus is only 8 bars. And then the last 2 bars of this don't have like synth or bass at all. And they've got that same sort of arp pattern, but the sound has changed. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to go ahead and erase the track on that pad, move to this one. What is that doing there? So I obviously have to like edit this one, right? Actually, let's just change the notes that we play. It's got a lot of stuff going on at the end there. Oh, you know what? That's just going into the reverb, isn't it? Let's see. Yeah, let's just change. Oops. Okay, so then in this case, actually, I'm going to, on this first step, record like a little bit of a lower send to the effects. And now this sounds really quiet, doesn't it? Oh, that's because I adjusted the level and I didn't adjust the effects. Oh, geez. So let's go back to the effects. And let's go ahead and, on this first step, just... Oops. Crap. So let's undo that. Okay, well, let's just start over then with this part. So let's do, I think it was 415? Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead then and we'll just play it higher up. And that sounds good enough to me. So let's just do that same exact pattern that we did before. I wonder why. Oh, it's because I recorded that stupid automation at the beginning. So I'm actually just going to erase the fader automation completely. Then I'm going to re-record this being at the very beginning. Okay, so that is going to be like our what you call it? That's going to be our pre-chorus. And what happens in the pre-chorus is that once you get to bars 7 and 8, the bass and the drums drop out. So what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and record a change to make the to make the level 0 at bar 7. I'm going to double this so that way I can do the same thing at bar 7 here. I'm going to change the fader to level, and I'll just record bringing the volume down to 0. And what comes after the pre-chorus? Well, the chorus. So I'm actually just going to go back to scene 1, and then I will duplicate it. Now I'm a bit confused as why this still says that this is muted when it absolutely shouldn't be here. So let's go ahead and see what's up with that. We've got our level here. Why wouldn't it? Well, okay, so just to be sure, let's just record a 100 right there for the level, record a 100 right there for the level, and we'll just do that for these other scenes too. Cool. And so because we had the chorus, before we had the chorus from the intro, and that's only 8 bars, so I'm going to just expand that drum to be 16, so that way we know that that's the case. I also just realized that I forgot to take out the hi-hats so from the verse and then the pre-chorus. So I'm going to go ahead and I went back to scene 2, and I'm going to hold erase and hold down this hi-hat pad. Go to scene 3, erase, and hold down the hi-hat. There, that sounds a little bit more like it. So let's bring it back here. There's a post-chorus that's very similar to the chorus, and in this case, I'm actually going to go ahead and just make it so that this is 24 bars, which is going to be like representative of the full 16-bar chorus, and then that 8-bar post-chorus. So I'll be able to remember the length of this just based on this pad. So that's our chorus and post-chorus come together. So next up, I'm going to go ahead and I will duplicate things again. I'm going to go back and I am going to create our next verse, pre-chorus, chorus, and then it goes bridge, chorus, post-chorus. So that shouldn't take too long, thankfully. So let's go ahead and let's find our verse, which is scene 2. I'm going to commit it. So now scene 5 is our second verse. Scene 3 was our pre-chorus. Now scene 6 is our second pre-chorus. And then, let's see, scene 4 is our chorus and post-chorus. I'm going to commit that. But I'm going to make sure that I remember that this is only 16 bars. This is not 24 bars for this part because we have a bridge afterward. I'm going to make the bridge by simply committing this chorus and then reducing this down to 8 bars. And finally, I'm going to eliminate that main melody that plays because that doesn't happen during the bridge. And then because it plays the chorus again afterward, we're going to go back here. Let me check that this is the chorus. Okay, cool. So I'm going to just commit that. Going to cut this into 8 bars. And then I'm going to go back and we're going to duplicate that post-chorus. At least that's what my note says. This is probably all pretty similar though when you're working with these lo-fi sounds. I just took kind of more detailed notes on what's happening in the actual like studio version of the song. And then finally there is a going to duplicate this scene. And for the end, I'm going to remove the drums completely. And that can be our outro. So this is far from perfect, but I'm going to go ahead and say that this is kind of close enough to the original. I'm just going to play this all the way through, no performance effects or anything like that, and I'm going to try to remember where to advance the scenes. It's hard to do without vocals and other stuff, but bear with me. And before we get going, I'll just say thank you so much for watching. There is one more video coming in this series that's more about improv and kind of breaking free of the shapes that I've taught you. But thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much for your support.